No matter where you live, whether it's a town or in the country, chances are you don't live too far from a churchyard or a cemetery. Have you ever just wandered around and read some of the headstones and wondered what kind of life these people had, or wondered how they died? If you look closely, you may find one that has a curious epitaph written upon it, or a couple of words that may seem curious and hint to something intriguing. In this series, I'll be bringing you stories behind these headstones to reveal an interesting life or a tragic and sorrowful end. These are not celebrities as we know today. Some may have been recognised in their lifetime but have forgotten names now, or they may be normal folk whose lives were tragically cut short. Join me as I discover some tales from the grave. In this episode, I visit Castle Green Cemetery, just outside Ironbridge in Shropshire. Right at the top of the path, we find the grave of a health pioneer. Sir Douglas Andrew Kilgore Black was a Scottish physician and medical scientist who played a key role in the development of the National Health Service. He conducted research in the field of public health and was famous as the author of the Black Report. Black was born in Delting, Shetland in 1913, educated at Forfar Academy and studied medicine at the Bute Medical School, University of St Andrews, graduating in 1933. He conducted research into water loss and dehydration, first at Oxford University and then at the University of Manchester, where he became Professor of Medicine in 1959. In 1974, he became the first Chief Scientist at the Department of Health and Social Security of the United Kingdom Government. From 1977 to 1983, he was President of the Royal College of Physicians. He also served as the President of the British Medical Association and took an uncompromising stand against the apartheid regime in South Africa. In the 1970s, Black was asked by the then Labour government of the UK to chair an expert committee to investigate health inequalities. The report produced by this committee, popularly known as the Black Report, was published in 1980. Although unpopular with the then Conservative government, it has had a major impact on knowledge on the subject of health inequality since that time. Later, Black chaired the UK government investigation into childhood leukemia around the nuclear reprocessing plant at Sellafield in Cumbria. Black was created a Knight Bachelor in 1973 and a Knight of the Most Venerable Order of St John of Jerusalem in 1989. Douglas Andrew Kilgore Black was President of the College and a former Chairman of the British Medical Association. A son of the Manse, it was his mother from whom he derived an association with medicine. She had been a ward sister at the Dundee Royal Infirmary. He confessed to having a happy childhood, mostly spent in Kirriemuir, to which his father was translated when he was 2, and far enough removed, one supposes, from the First World War and its aftermath for a loving family to provide an emotional shield. From Forfar Academy, he went to St Andrews for his medical education, which included a Bachelor of Science made possible by competitive bursary, followed by clinical training in Dundee. Qualifying in 1936, he had house posts at Dundee Royal Infirmary. He obtained one of the first Medical Research Council studentships in clinical research and went to Oxford to work in the new Nuffield Department of Medicine. Here, while studying, he developed 3 long-lasting interests: in nutrition, in water and electrolyte metabolism, and through its central involvement in the consequences of shock, the kidney. In 1942, his time in research was halted and he joined the Royal Army Medical Corps. He was posted first to Sierra Leone, but soon reposted to India, arriving after a sea journey of 2 months, which, at seeing good weather, must have been a pleasant interlude. Short postings in the Deccan and in Burma were followed by an appointment to lead the biochemistry division of the Central Military Pathology Laboratory Service in Pune. He returned to England in 1946 and was appointed lecturer in the Department of Medicine in Manchester. Douglas ran a busy clinical and teaching service and worked on various aspects of electrolytes, particularly potassium metabolism. Inevitably, he was recruited by the Medical Research Council to launch and chair various multi-centre controlled trials, usually on steroid treatment of various forms. Douglas Black was promoted to Professor of Medicine in Manchester from 1959 to 1973. His department continued to have a vigorous general medical interest, as well as being in the forefront of British nephrology. Black was cautious on the introduction of regular hemodialysis for the treatment of chronic renal failure. He recognised that any treatment for a uniformly fatal condition was an advance, but was uncertain that it would be possible to treat effectively all those in need. His perception remains relevant still. Even though the basic technique of dialysis is now supplemented by improved nutrition, blood pressure control and specific treatment of such previously intractable complications of renal failure as anemia or the derangement of bone metabolism known as renal bone disease, the number of patients with renal failure still exceeds the capacity to treat them in many countries, including the United Kingdom. As already noted, Black was early a part of the Medical Research Council, gaining one of its first studentships. In the event, his involvement with it proved long-lasting. In 1966, he was appointed an independent scientific member on its council, and in 1971 he became chairman of its Clinical Research Board. This was a particularly challenging time for the Medical Research Council, as indeed for sister non-medical research bodies. The government wanted to get a recognisable return for its investment in them. Lord Rothschild reported and suggested a customer-contractor principle. Thus, government would indicate the research areas it wished to be addressed, and the contractor would set about the tasks. As a way of achieving productive research in the given environment, it was to say the least a dubious proposition. Michael Heseltine, who had to implement this approach in the research bodies under his then Ministry of Trade, has described it as flawed since it did not account for the structure of these bodies, which were essentially groups of scientists of varied but constrained talents. Attempts to conduct research in which the scientific body was not expert would have meant redundancies on a large scale and never happened. Perhaps to his surprise, Black was invited to become chief scientist to the Department of Health and so to implement this policy, which he had questioned both in private and in public. He set about this in a characteristic way, recruiting sensible people to assist in developing specific projects. He himself described the difficulties in trying to constrain naturally free-thinking science either to the customer-contractor principle or to specific topics thought to be of pressing importance to the health service. He also encountered the difficulty of making telling innovations when the funds available were being reduced and the process for spending them subjected to increased rigour. While Black enjoyed his time in the higher reaches of the civil service, not least because of the insights it gave into the workings of government and the people who make that happen, he welcomed the opportunity offered by his election in 1977 to be president of the college, an office he carried for the next 6 years. After his term of office in the college, he was president of the British Medical Association from 1984 to 1985, and later president of the Medical Council for Alcoholism and of Health Concern. But it was more for his work with Townsend, Morris and Smith that he became more widely known. Before he left the Department of Health, these four had begun to study the basis for inequality in health. In 1980, the Department of Health published the report on a Friday afternoon before the August bank holiday. Douglas's special gift was the deadpan remark, delivered almost too quietly to be heard, that would puncture the pompous occasion and relive boredom. One of the last occasions that he spoke in public was the dinner of the 50th anniversary of the Renal Association in 2000, when he thanked the Society for providing him with a free meal. The Black Report was an exhaustive analysis of sickness and mortality rates that established the nature of the inextricable link between poverty and ill health. It showed that while the health and lifespan of the wealthy in the UK continued to improve, that of the most deprived groups had fallen for the first time since the Victorian era. The report was a stark reminder that William Beveridge's plan for a national health service, founded on the idea of bringing the greatest health improvements to the most disadvantaged people, was not happening. The explanation rested partly on a combination of factors involving education, mobility and lifestyle. Black also found faults in the national and local structure necessary for the uniform delivery of healthcare. Although Black's recommendations galvanised an international debate on health reforms, they were unwelcome in the UK. A newly elected Conservative government was against publishing the Black Report and distanced itself from recommendations that would be costly to implement. As well as the implications for taxation, Black regarded the case against smoking as proven, and it was typical that he proposed the obvious solution, an immediate ban on tobacco. Black was a gentleman, but wielded a sword-like pen and often reflected on the irrationality in government health policies. In 1948 he married Molly Thorne, with whom he had a son and 2 daughters. A quiet family man, his public appearances were rare. He remained an optimist about the NHS, remarking in 1995 that its structure and essential justice were tough enough and sufficiently appreciated by ordinary folk to survive. Sir Douglas Andrew Kilgore Black passed away in 2002 from pancreatic cancer. He was aged 89. His wife Molly died in 2005 and she is buried with him. Their headstone reads, Sir Douglas Andrew Kilgore Black, 1913 to 2002. Philosopher, writer, Professor of Medicine at the University of Manchester. President of the Royal College of Physicians, 1977 to 1983. Husband of Molly, father of Andrew, Alison and Teresa. An inspiration to all who lived and worked with him. May he rest in peace. And his dearly beloved wife Molly, née Thorne, 1919 to 2005.